Recorded at the studios of Chicago Public Media, WBEZ, this is Stages to Success. The drive to excel is universal, as is the pride in a job well done. Whether you're staring down a decision maker for a multi-million-dollar contract, a television camera or microphone, a negotiating adversary, or an irate conductor, the pressure to perform can be exhilarating and exhausting. Join me and meet great storytellers from music and business. Today's episode tells the story of two pioneers of the micro-living trend in multifamily commercial real estate, the original partners of Cedar Street companies, Alex Samoylovich and the late J. Michael. Alex and Jay were childhood friends who had many interesting common bonds. This episode is both an explanation of Cedar Street's innovative approach, their great success, and an homage to Alex's partner, Jay. Thanks for doing this today, by the way. I think, I know I met you on a walkthrough when I think I was representing my art school tenant 5-6 years ago. I wanted to sort of flesh out two things. It was what I talked with Christina about is your concepts, how you guys started to really drive a new niche in the market with Cedar Street and, your relationship with Jay and then sort of an homage to him, right? Because, you're left without him as a partner and a friend, I'm sure. Have you since partnered with anybody else since Jay died, or are you running Cedar Street more or less on your own as a senior partner? How has that worked out?
We've added two phenomenal partners who've been with us for a very long time, and are currently today partners in Cedar Street and all of our holdings.
Okay,
it's Will Murphy.
Yeah.
And Mark Heffron.
And these guys were internal to the company before and then bought equity or, became equity partners. Is that how it worked?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
They became equity partners. Yes.
And Jay was a single guy. Do you have a family? Is there anybody in his family that is still financially involved with Cedar Street?
So Jay was single, and he had two brothers and multiple nieces who are still investors in our property.
I like that. I like that a lot. So let's back up. You and Jay actually met in public school as kids?
Yes, in elementary. We lived a few blocks away from each other in Skokie, so we've known each other since elementary school.
That is amazing. And were you buds in elementary school? Did you hang out with different kids? Did you beat him up? I mean, what was the background there in early school?
Sure, absolutely. So yes, he was a year younger than me. We lived a few blocks away from each other. He had a group of friends, and I had a group of friends. We had a couple people crossover, so we knew each other. We weren't very close. I would say early on, maybe picked on him. But later on, we became more of like peer, mutual friends. We had some mutual friends.
Yeah.
I think one of my closest friends became a close friend of his, and that was kind of the beginning or building of our relationship.
Wow. We
got closer, a little bit closer in high school.
And you said you guys both grew up in Skokie?
Correct. Blocks away from each other. And
you said your parents were immigrants from the Soviet Union?
Correct. My parents came here as refugees around 1978 or 79.
Interesting. And did I've actually have represented World Relief. Did they come through that refugee program that World Relief has had for a million years?
It was an organization through actual ADL, Anti-Defamation League.
Okay.
And they had a spinoff called Highest organization. And my parents came through that. And actually, I was recently, I think like 3 years ago, honored as a ADL spokesperson.
Oh,
kind of,
that's really
kind of
cool.
interesting. My parents came through that, like about the American dream.
Yeah, and you yourself were born here?
I was born here in 1980. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, same deal as
In
me.
Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was an immigrant, and I'm born here. And there's something to that. The more people I talk to, I guess the pressure you feel from an immigrant parent to make the most of this opportunity that was so much was sacrificed for. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Especially since they came from a communist country,
yeah,
and so at the time, so for them, like I think definitely instilled deeply into our values.
yeah. I mean, did they actually defect, or did they just wait out the process and get over here?
They defected or that time as refugees and were able to leave in a wave of Russian Jewish immigrants.
What about Jay's family? Were they also an immigrant family? Had they been here for a while?
Yeah, they were also immigrated from Iran. They're Persian Jews
Okay.
that immigrated from Iran. I don't remember exactly when, but yes, his father immigrated here with his brother, and then moved to Chicago
Yeah.
directly from as well. But I think it was in the 60s or 70s.
Right. But, as two first generation kids, then you guys definitely had a common bond. I mean, I can tell you that whether you realized it or not, it's a common bond.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Was there a common interest that you and Jay had? Did you both work at a similar job outside of school? Did you, what was sort of the gestation of you two guys ending up working together later?
I think both of our families, I think some people have asked us this before, but both of our families, the commonality of having immigrant parents coming here to America and instilling, creating and running their own family businesses. So I think entrepreneurship was our commonality. So growing up, elementary school, junior high, him and I are both trying to run little, businesses similar to like what most kids do.
Like what?
I think in high school, when most kids are preparing to go to spring break, me and Jay were actually putting together and orchestrating that spring break. And by doing so, we would end up being able to go on our trips because it's not like our parents could necessarily pay for it.
Yep.
But essentially, by putting everything together, we were getting licensed, within the travel community to be able to orchestrate, spring break activities and other types of businesses similar to that. And I think started on early. And surprisingly, in high school, we both had a fascination with real estate.
That is interesting.
His family was in real estate, and I had no background in real estate, but his interest was with residential. So he would get access to the MLS,
yeah,
and memorize and learn he could tell you every building, and basically on every building, every unit type, and based on the unit type, the end of the actual, if it was a unit number, let's say it's like 3101,
yeah,
you would know what that tier, that 01 tier, where it was facing in the high-end residential buildings.
Amazing.
So he had a lot of interest in design, real estate, mainly in residential, but he had a really great, I think, overall concept of understanding. He was very intrigued, and so was I within the real estate space.
He's like playing real life Monopoly as a kid. He's got sort of this almost photographic memory, like one of our previous guests with baseball statistics and people. He's committing this to memory because he's just a geeky kid about real estate, right?
Yeah, yeah. He definitely had a knack for design, and had both in general had I think phenomenal memories. But just for things that had specific interest to us, his was within the real estate space, tiers, buildings, units, finishes. I think some of those were his, really strong strengths.
Yep. And then you said that his parents were actually involved in real estate?
Yes, the father, the dad and the uncle had both been in two different types of asset classes. The father originally started with a wallpaper store
Okay.
in the city, and what they did was ended up buying a small strip center where their business was located.
Yep.
But eventually, as the wallpaper business didn't do well, what they did do well was the real estate, and they continued to buy and build and expand with small strip centers, retail strip centers. And Jay's uncle became a very large landlord in apartments.
Okay.
Still is in Chicago, called Horizon Realty Group.
What did your parents do? The Soviet refugees. What did they get involved in for a business when you were a little guy?
So when my parents came here to America, my father was a structural engineer for a large Chicago integrated real estate developer called JMB.
Okay.
Worked as a structural engineer for them, or for a firm that worked for them. And my mom borrowed money from a few friends, and her experience was in bringing Eastern European, like a deli called Three Sisters Deli, and having a deli for the Russian community here in Chicago. And she had two other sisters, so she named it Three Sisters Deli, and it was primarily in a Russian, highly Russian neighborhood where Russians came here on Devon in California.
Wow. So you guys had entrepreneurship hard boiled in as a trait, and and actually you had both sides of the real estate business. You had the engineering side and the investment landlord side in your two parents' businesses. Did they just sit around the table and talk with each other when you were kids, and you'd have a Sabbath meal together, and everybody's talking about real estate and you guys are just drinking it in?
I think it was more of like less of real estate, more entrepreneurship, because, like, for example, my dad eventually my mom was in business, Eastern European Deli, for about 30 years, opened in 79, and I think they literally kept it open till they retired. And one of the things I would see or hear is every day, parents would come in to the end. I would actually even literally see my parents, counting and counting the money and doing the bookkeeping and closing out every day, manually themselves. They worked there every day, and they were there, so I saw them. And then when we couldn't really afford to have nannies or babysitters, my time off was spent in the store, playing around and running around their store.
You have that,
seeing them.
Right? You have that exactly in common with Episode 3, Goldie Wolf Miller, whose immigrant parents ran a deli. And her idea of vacation was a Saturday delivering meat.
And my mom would be meat and fish, and I would watch my mom sell fish and meat and caviar to anybody and everybody who walked in. So my sales skills became extremely relevant in our ability to kind of grow this business.
Did you and Jay start out in first jobs, and I'm not talking about the lemonade stand here, that were in any way related to real estate? Did either of you guys work in the trades and marketing for your parents? What about that?
No, so Jay moved when he moved to London to go to University of Richmond, London. He worked at CNBC, Middle East, Europe, and Africa, selling media space to hotels and hotels around the world in barter for media space.
Interesting.
And that was right within only a year or two out of college. And his father passed away. He moved back, and that's when we started the company. And for me, when I was in college, I started trading equities and options on the screen because my mom gave me some of my college money to buy an IPO that one of my friend's fathers was a part of. and I wanted to become a trader. So I never had a job outside of trading for my own account.
Mm-hmm.
Or when we started our actual company, I was 22 and he was 21, and we were going to focus on doing real estate brokerage and using that money to invest into foreclosures, single-family houses, townhouses.
And you, where did you go to college, Alex?
I went to University of Iowa for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then my mother got sick. I went to DePaul for a few years,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom was sick, and I was forced to start working. And at that time, we started a real estate company.
Did you guys keep in close touch when he's going to college in London and you're back here in the Midwest?
No, and we weren't actually even as close, but where we kind of reunited and put our entire relationship back together. When his father passed away, he came to Chicago, and at the Shiva, he reached out to me, and we actually, at the Shiva, kind of reignited our relationship, our friendship. And that was like the inflection point of the beginning of our strength of our relationship and our partnership. We started a company within less than a year after that.
What was the commonality there? I mean, you're both Jewish, you both have immigrant parents, but what was the click? What was the click of, yeah, I'm trading based on this IPO. Yeah, I'm marketing for this, for advertising with CNBC. But what was the commonality that said, oh my gosh, we got to start a company?
So in 2001, that was around the time his father had passed away, the market, or 2000, 2001, the market had crashed. His father passed away between 2001 and 2002. And I wanted to have less volatility, and I wanted to just focus on real estate because I had bought a condo for myself when I was 19.
Wow.
I was going to buy more condos and start renting them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing some foreclosures, and I was planning on actually starting my own business, doing foreclosures and brokering real estate. At the age of 21, the week I turned 21, I got my own real estate license.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, Jay was moving back. His father passed away, and he was planning on moving back to be close to his family, his mom, and at the same time to help manage their real estate portfolio.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, I said, I'm planning on starting my own real estate company. And he's like, do you want a partner? And I'm like, sure. I'd rather not do it myself. And since you have some real estate experience, be a good fit. He also, his father's partner, who got his father started, felt like he wanted to be a mentor to us.
Great.
And he said he would give us money. And what we needed him more than anything was we needed somebody with gray hair
Yep.
to help get us loans and sign our ability to get loans for acquisitions of our foreclosure business.
So you're doing some foreclosure purchases. I assume you're dealing with some short sales. You're kind of classic. You're sort of classic, REO workout guys in residential. At that point, what were your margins like? I mean, when you were flipping them, were you flipping them? Were you keeping them into a portfolio? How were you doing in the first couple of years with that model?
So we did phenomenally because we started that business in 2001, and through 2004, we did 1 to 200 properties and learned the foreclosure business extremely well.
Phenomenal.
At that time, the market had not really had workout groups and REO departments. We would actually go to auctions. We'd buy properties anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000.
Yep.
And what the value of it was, we were able to turn around, buy, renovate, and sell within less than 4 to 6 months from beginning to end.
Excellent.
So we kind of began the beginning of what we called vertical integration. We did our own brokerage. We would all do our own rehab, did our own title work or title searches, and we were able to kind of keep a tight margin business and high volume and quick turnaround.
Yep.
So from 2001 to 2004, we averaged 100 to 200 properties a year. Was able to recycle the same funds and dollars was able to get credit lines from some bankers and build some relationships. But as every year from 2001 to 2004, margins got tighter and tighter.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time 2004 happened, and I just had experienced where I had a contrarian type of model, and coming from a stock market, one of the greatest stock market crashes in 2001, we got more cautious. So in 2004 to 7, we leaned more on brokerage and consulting,
Yep.
and did only 2 or 3 deals, but we're focused on getting into commercial real estate. And in 2007, the strategy of buying failed condo conversions or failed multifamily assets,
Yep.
we believed that the market would tank, and our goal was to buy failed condo conversions, convert them back into apartments. We decided to do that in 2007, and the market crashed a year later.
And luckily you weren't cross-collateralized with everything that you had in residential and lending in '08.
So we had the biggest thing was we had no inventory other than one asset. So at that time, our balance sheets were extremely fresh, and we had no legacy assets, and had already earned and invested some prior dollars, and with investors. And from 2008 to today, we first focused on buying distressed multifamily assets, middle market,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from 1 to 20 million, anywhere from 10 to 300 units. We did over 8,000 units since 2008, and over $2 billion in total assets, total capitalization of assets we acquired. And from there, our Cedar Street companies divisions grew into vertically integrated companies, from design architecture to construction to property management and mortgage banking. And as the distressed market started to slow down, we bought less foreclosures, but we found another niche, continued to expand into the new niche of adaptive reuse,
Right.
historic preservation, and landmark structures, and historic tax credit work. And from there, we knew that our main strength was in multifamily, and we decided to create the first branded multifamily product called Flats.
So, it's interesting I'm hearing a lot of commonalities with you in the Goldie Wolf Miller episode, where she stayed really nimble and flexible and responded to the market with what she delivered as a service, in her brokerage. Were you guys called Cedar Street between '01 and '04, or did you operate under a different name?
We operated under Estate Properties, which we still own and operate today, but Estate Properties was our original brokerage, our brokerage shop.
What would you say was the first big project where you had to work hard to borrow in order to be able to accomplish your objectives?
I mean, in the foreclosure business, I remember buying our first note from J.P. Morgan Chase, which at the time seemed like all the money in the world.
Sure.
We bought a $3 million note for $1 million for a single-family house in Highland Park in High Ridge. And we had 1 week to come up with $1 million in cash to buy the note. And then we had to work hard to get a deed in lieu with the borrower. And there were some challenges within the building or house itself. That was on the single family side, I remember. But within our actual commercial business, I would say like one of the biggest inflection points was definitely the Lawrence house. I would say was definitely one of the largest inflection points.
I have to explain for our non-business real estate listeners that a deed in lieu is a deed in lieu of foreclosure, which rather than going through the entire brain damage and process, you take the deed to the property. Were you confident of this, of this J.P. Morgan note, and that you guys would exit out of this with big, a big payday?
Looking back at the choices we made, I think that honestly, looking back at a lot of the first 10 years of our company history, we truly didn't have the confidence that we do, I think, after our 30s. I think the confidence in truly understanding what we were doing was going to turn out well. But I feel like we felt like we didn't have a choice but to figure it out. And that was the mentality we've kept always. But early on, I can tell you now looking back, is we truly didn't have the confidence. We had many times second guessed ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think perseverance and persistency was one of some of the key traits.
Well, I'll tell you as a little older guy that the second guessing is just plain wisdom, pal.
Yeah.
Who was the more confident at that point when you were risk taking, Jay or you?
I think of myself, I was definitely in regards to the risk tolerance in the company history. I would say it was myself. Jay was extremely cautious and more worrisome.
Yeah.
Early on.
Stages to Success can be found on TuneIn Radio, Google Play, iTunes, or our RSS feed. The link can be found at www.stagestosuccesspodcast.com. Try telling your Amazon Echo to play it by commanding Play Stages to Success Podcast. This is your host, John Hunter. If you, your company, or your organization would like to sponsor our real estate episodes, you can have an internal advertisement placed in the podcast. Please contact me at john@jhunterservices.com. We're listening to an interview with Alex Samoylovich, a founding partner of Cedar Street Companies. When did this idea of a radically smaller footprint for this micro-residential lifestyle hit you two? When and who kind of floated it first?
I think that it started somewhere between 2008 and 2009. After our first multifamily redevelopment, and after the first project that we had done and renovated, we did. I think you believe it. The concept started actually in one of our projects in Hyde Park, probably between 2008 and 2009. And the reason why was in Hyde Park, a lot of pre-war buildings that we acquired, the type of unit types were so large for the unit type because the way that people lived when those buildings were built was significantly different than were today. Meaning there would be studios that are 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms that were larger and 2 bedrooms were larger, formal dining rooms, foyers, eating kitchens, large master closets. When we bought our building there, we figured, I wonder if we can convert a studio to a 1 bedroom, a 1 bedroom to a 2 bedroom, and a 3 bedroom to a 2 bedroom to a 3 bedroom. And when we did that, we started to realize people are talking about shrinking in micro, but what we're truly, I think, revolutionized and are focused on is what's called the unit square foot optimization. We believe that if you shrink any unit type, it synthetically creates a lower chunk price for the consumer, a lower cost.
Yeah, lower monthly nut. That's what they're looking at.
That's correct. But for the investors and bankers, we would achieve a higher rent per square foot.
Sure.
And once we started understanding that, we started to understand we would make more money on any unit type. But what we did notice is we would make the highest is the smaller it got, the more rent per square foot we got. And at the same time, we started to understand is that in general, that it would create ability to not have to have roommates, and studios in 1 bedrooms became a very integral product type that we wanted to focus on.
So you had the classic commercial real estate mindset. The smaller tenants we can get, the more price per square foot we can generate. But you transferred it over to the lifestyle, 1 less roommate, more independence, all that sort of thing. Did you have trouble convincing your lenders or partner investors that this micro living could actually work?
Yes, for a very, very, very long time. Until just recently, we've now have become the. We've only now have people acknowledged that this is not just a trend, but this is actually a long-term. This is a long-term niche that I think essentially our true thesis is this is the true solution to the affordability crisis.
Right. And I believe I'm a true believer, Alex. I've been reporting on you guys back to the original developer partners I worked with in New York since 2010. I would send them any article about what you guys were doing, and I said, "Do you believe this?" What was your metric before you started? What was your average studio apartment size when you first started, and what is it today?
Well, we obviously didn't have like a large data set, but I would say in, let's say, 1,000 units, the average unit size of a studio would have been like 550 to 750 square feet.
And now?
250 to 350 square feet.
Awesome. I love metrics. What was the very first generation of tenants and then maybe buyers of your product that you were delivering? And how did you reach those people? How did you market to them?
So I think in general, the easiest conversation when we started leasing to these small micro units, I don't think they the term millennials it wasn't even being used yet.
Yep.
But it was to millennials before millennials were even called millennials.
How'd you reach them?
Well, what is the best way to reach millennials was through digital marketing. Essentially, we never did any of the older forms. When I started, people were still doing marketing for ads.
Right.
In Chicago Tribune and Chicago sometimes classified ads.
It's funny how we laugh at that today, don't we? But you chuckle even saying it. But yeah.
Yeah. We spent no money on marketing or leasing an advertisement when everybody was spending money. We started our biggest and first, I think, best lead generation was Craigslist, to be honest with you.
Amazing. Not Facebook or Instagram, or Instagram wasn't quite around yet. But
Instagram wasn't around, and to be honest, I don't even think Facebook was around when we started.
Okay.
Or if it was when Facebook was around, it was only for college. It was with the .edu email. So
okay.
More of like on-campus type of social network.
And I have told my clients now and then again when they need to sublease, and it really doesn't make sense for me to take it to the market for them because it's a really small maybe set of offices or a small place in general, that Craigslist will work for them. And they've had actually pretty good luck.
Yeah, I think Craigslist is a phenomenal platform, for overall marketplace.
The guys that I worked for in New York will appreciate this, Bob and Rich, because when they first brought a product to upstate New York that was true mixed-use development, like the Hancock Center is today, retail, office, and private living, they were absolutely ridiculed by the other developers in the market. Did you face that with this micro concept?
Yes. With the micro concept, our overall being extremely young, becoming vertically integrated real estate developer. So to try to say that we were going to do a lot of everything in-house was ridiculed. The concept for micro was ridiculed. Even considering to being the first branded multifamily concept, mixing hospitality and multifamily together was all ridiculed.
What's a ridicule of the micro that you brought to the market that really sits with you today? You remember a particular cutting comment or an article? What's something that you and Jay looked at and thought, man, that's kind of mean?
I think I never really focused too much on specifics on being ridiculed. What was really common is we got so used to people telling us why things won't work
Yeah.
is what we just did is use all of that as fuel to say, let it just to give us that fuel and energy to go and prove everybody wrong.
Uh-huh.
For a very, very long time across anything and everything we've done, we've been criticized, whether it would work or not. And for us, our only main thing was just put our heads down and prove everyone wrong.
Yeah, then I'm going to concur with that in my former music career. For every lost audition or being told that, I don't think you're going to cut this, it does give you fuel to succeed. And on the business side, I think the former partner I work for, Rich, in New York, used to say that all the time. It's, those people that will tell you no, they have their own ulterior motives. Just keep thinking about how you're gonna do it. Were some lenders pretty rough on you when you rolled the concept up to them?
Yeah, I would say there was one of our largest projects, which was also one of our biggest inflection points. We went to every bank in the city of Chicago, went through every single lender, and no one got it. And who would live in 250 square feet, especially in the neighborhood where we were looking? It's like major markets, maybe like New York or San Francisco, Chicago, let alone the north side neighborhood of Uptown. It just would never work. So we went to every lender in town. And then after about a year of trying to get financing, there was one lender that took a chance with us and has been one of the many lenders that has become an integral part of our growth and has been a great community lender to us as well. The former private bank and currently the CIBC bank was, I think took a really great risk with us and have been great to us ever since.
When you guys hit roadblocks in your lending or in any part of the procedure, how did you and Jay pick each other up? What did you have to offer each other as partners that he's got this that helps me, I've got this that encourages him? Talk a little bit about that.
One of the things was we really never took no for an answer, and if someone said no, we would still push. What him and I were both really good at is convincing people and selling. Both of him had and I, one of the few things that we had skills share set was we could sell and convince people. But one of the things to motivate each other is that this was our life's work. Some people like, if it doesn't work out, we'll do this. Him and I were like brothers, and him and I only knew one thing in our lives. All we had was this company. It was like our child.
Right.
We protected our dream like we would protected our child. And by doing that, we reminded each other we had each other's back.
Was there
having that support? It was very nice.
Was there one of you guys that could get discouraged a little more easy, or was there one of you guys that got angry more easy? I mean, what were you call inflection points in business? You use that term a lot, but there are inflection points in personality and partnerships too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jay was a lot more hot-tempered. Jay was also easier to get discouraged. I kind of believed in our own Kool-Aid, and I did whether it was naive or not, we just believed extremely in ourselves and our ability to figure it out. And I think kind of what I love about my new two partners today is I feel like we are a perfect balance of even more above and beyond the extension of what Jay and I started. Me, Will, and Mark are now a tripod of what Jay and I were.
Was there one project that you and Jay had that you felt really put you on the map? It legitimized you. It said these guys have arrived with Cedar Street and their concepts.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's very clear that project was Lauren's house. And I think the entire market and everybody across the country today, we're getting people coming out of everywhere in the woodworks come to see Lauren's house. And
talk about the address, the number of units, the finance.
So it's 1020 West Lawrence Avenue in Chicago. It's located in Uptown, which is essentially like us. We call the Brooklynization strategy. It's essentially what like Brooklyn was 10, 15 years ago.
Uh-huh.
It's 344 micro apartments with an average unit size of 275 square feet.
Amazing.
And there's, I think, in regards to every metric that it was an original hotel that because Uptown was a entertainment district during Prohibition. After Prohibition, the use for hotels became obsolete. In the 70s, so as a lot of immigrants from around the world came, poor immigrants, it became a very high impoverished area. And then eventually in the 60s and 70s, mental institutions in Illinois were deinstitutionalized, and a lot of them were sent to Uptown. So in short, this building was high density of impoverished people with mental disabilities, and became and then as they continued to grow older, it became elderly impoverished people with some mental disability, specifically in this building. So it had so many challenges in a market that were very challenged. And you can't build micro this small in anywhere in Chicago. And how we were able to do it was within the existing zoning code. We were able to find abilities to create what's called legal non-conforming status. So we can never replicate this probably anywhere across the country. So this asset will become and stay unique for a very, very long time, and is becoming a really good showroom of what the perfect ecosystem of hospitality living looks like by converging live, work, and play. Essentially, it is a version of WeWork and Soho House, with apartment living, with amenity-rich environment.
So I remember pitching on a project to the Salvation Army over there on Sunnyside in that area. So were you dealing with what had been an SRO, a single room occupancy type building?
So yes, it wasn't technically classified, and there's like just technicalities. It was running like an SRO,
okay,
but it wasn't technically classified as an SRO. But yes, this building was essentially running, as most people would be familiar with, similar to like an SRO.
Mm-hmm. And your answer bled right into my next question, because I seriously have been tracking what you've been doing since about 2010, maybe even mid-2009. I believe that your concepts have led in a lot of ways here in Chicago to the explosion of the success of WeWork, where you have this concept of smaller individual footprints for people, but at the same time, this shared amenity, this it's a mindset more than anything financial. Do you see any other cross-pollinizations of your ideas into other stuff, into the way restaurants run, into the way amenities are being driven into other parts of the market?
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that it's because of us, but I do believe that there's cross-pollination across live, work, and play. There's so many new companies. Like Equinox is going to mix fitness, which is play, with co-working and living.
How are they doing? How are they going to do that with co-working and working out?
Well, so they're building entire buildings. So when you talk about your clients in New York doing a mixed-use building,
yes,
an office building, a retail building. Equinox is building Equinox buildings where you can live in the building. It'll be apartments or condos. It'll have a gym, and then there'll be space for co-working. Lifetime is doing this. Not Lifetime, which Fitness is now changing their name to Lifetime. Doing that, WeWork, Soho House, Common, Medici. A lot of these companies are starting to cross-pollinate across live, work, and play. And what I think our uniqueness is within our strategy is one of our investors who's like my mentor and my unofficial chairman of the board. When he says all of this perfect ecosystem where people live, work, and play, and some of these campuses they're creating like Facebook, they're creating villages. keeping proximity. But if you could put everything under one building, what's the core nucleus? And that's live. And then from there, co-working and fitness and hospitality like short stay, Airbnb. You could put everything under one building, live, work, and play. And that's what I think the future of like hospitality living looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I think Flats is the leader and innovator in that.
I think you guys are also killing off the automobile, to be perfectly frank, just from a development standpoint. When I've gone into pitches with a municipality, we're seeing the required automobile parking for units going from 1.7 cars per unit now down to one or less. Have you seen that as well with the parking components of what you're doing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you look in Chicago, we were the first to start focusing on transit-oriented developments before they had a term called transit-oriented developments, which is today called TOD. And essentially, if you look at all of our properties, the proximity to public transportations and trains is its walking distance. But one of our biggest strategies also was understanding the zoning code and being able to, our parking ratios on some of our biggest developments like Lawrence House, 344 apartments, we have zero parking.
Yep.
Bush Temple, 116 units going to 250 units on the first phase with zero parking spaces. And how we were able to do that within the zoning code, which is very challenging, is Illinois landmarks. One of the advantages of landmark structures and historic buildings is you get to have a zero parking ratio. So we were a firm believer for the last 10 years that in studios and one bedrooms, our demographic and sociographic doesn't need or want cars and wants to is close already close proximity either to public transportation or to where they work and play.
Mm-hmm. And I'm representing a building now with a DX zoning in River North where we're just coming up against that exact issue with the adaptive reuse of it. When at this point of your partnership and your growing business, did Jay find out about his Hodgkin's lymphoma and confide it to you?
It was about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. He found out and called me and let me know literally the day of him leaving the hospital and told me everything was going to be okay, and then that the probability or the people surviving was like a 75 or 80% chance of survival. And unfortunately, he had found, later on towards the end, passed away 9 months away after finding out. He had a really rare aggressive form of it. And in regards to where that was in the company, it was like literally the beginning of the largest growth the company has ever seen, which was pretty much over the last 3 years was the biggest explosion of growth of our company.
And as friends and as partners, did you guys bring that same mentality that you did to the other obstacles that you had with lending in your business? Like, we're going to beat this. We're going to beat this.
So even up until the last, he was extremely brave and strong. I mean, he chronicled and journaled his entire process through Huffington Post. So Huffington Post picked up his blog on his experience through like 4 or 5 different articles. And he didn't want to look and think of himself as like a survivor, but as a warrior.
Yeah.
And his plan was never at any point to give up, and he never believed and thought till the end that he was not going to make it.
And I'll put that link in our podcast. And we're talking a really young man. What was he, like 36 years old?
34.
34. This is it's like a Lou Gehrig thing, somebody being picked off in their absolute prime. As you as a friend, but also as a business visionary, what is the legacy to our industry? I mean, everybody says, he was a fighter, he was a nice guy, and I don't mean to minimize that. That's crucially important in your personal life. But to our industry, what would be the legacy that you would want people to know about Jay, about what he's contributed to what you've experienced as a company and what we're experiencing as a society because of your guys' projects?
I think that there's a couple comments. One is simple: is he was a creative genius, and I think he had so many characteristics and similarities to like Steve Jobs.
Okay.
And I thought he was an extremely creative genius. And every day I come to work, every day we see a building, I see a piece of him in every one of our buildings, especially similar to, like sentimental value to like the Lawrence House.
Yeah.
But if what he left for society and what we trying to do is this extension or creation of flats and what we plan on doing together as a company, I think that he wanted people to live well. And I think that what he has done is there's a world where flats will become a new asset class of hospitality living. And that was the convergence of apartments and hospitality and how people can live well in society. And I think, we were big on that along with wellness, and, traveling, wanderlust. He lived a very amazing life in such a short window. Most people don't get to live and experience and do all the things he did. And just the impact we made into a neighborhood like Uptown, and that was proven out. They named the street after him, at the age of 34. So
wow. Have you guys done any particular funding of a project or scholarship or anything that points to his memory, either with a school or in the industry or anything?
So we have, and we'll be continuing to manage like his tribute site called J. Michael Living. And I think in the future we'll continue to expand on some of the things he's wanted. So we sit on the boards of a couple non-for-profits, and we support some of the missions that he had done. So, and a couple we added to the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society, Refugee One, which he was a part of, Heartland Alliance. And I think the expansion of right now, my wife and I are involved in the Northwestern Cancer Society and Hippocratic Society.
Yep.
And that's kind of where he was at, and who took care of him through his fight with cancer.
Yeah, and it sounds like his dad might have passed a little on the early side too, right?
Yeah, actually, that was some of the similarities. Him and I both wanted to get our lives healthier lives and live well. Both of our fathers passed away when we were young.
Yeah.
Right, a few years apart. His father from a heart attack and my father from a stroke. And I think that was an inflection point in his life to lose weight and get healthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's what you guys, accomplished together, and now you alone and with your new partners is really, it's a story that I've been tracking a long time, Alex, and in the podcast, the great majority of the real estate stories are about the commercial world. I think that what you're doing radically affects the commercial world, like we spoke of in the WeWork context, but also I have boys. They're in their early 20s and the early parts of their career. And some of the decisions they're making about not being leveraged into a house that's too large, about not being a slave to a mortgage and too many cars and all the stuff that my baby boomer generation belly flopped in through 2004 to 8. They've learned from that lesson. And I think that your model of what you're doing actually plays to an entire social shift. And I think it's going to affect even our office leasing and our building buying. I mean, philosophically, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I had just recently looked at statistics and understanding this new generation is all, and if you look at all the different services and successful companies, I mean, if you talk about real estate, but look at the generation, don't want to own cars. We don't even want to own actual physical assets like DVDs or CDs or tapes, because you have a generation of Spotify and subscription model of almost anything and everything.
Yep.
So there's a whole entire shift of, asset owning versus asset light across all different types of models. Nobody really, everybody, there's like that flexibility of, entire generation. I think that's obviously relevant across all asset classes in real estate, and then many different types of other assets. I mean, there's like, you look in retail, people don't even necessarily want to own their own purses. They rent the runway,
Wow.
So.
Well, I congratulate you and in memoriam Jay for seeing it, for grasping it, for taking a risk at it, and being not only early adapters, but really early pioneers and how it affects our industry. And I'm really grateful that you took your time during the Chicago Air and Naval Show and Water Show that I could hear in the background to interview with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words and the support over the years.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed and were touched by today's interview with Alex Samoylovich, one of the 2 founding partners of Cedar Street Companies in Chicago. I'm your host, John Hunter. Digital editing and technical assistance from Monty Scott, and recorded at the studios of Chicago Public Media at Navy Pier. Join us again for people and stories from the worlds of the symphony orchestra and commercial real estate for our next episode of Stages to Success.